All right, here we are. This is our first episode of our podcast that we finally got going.
What's the name?
What's the name? Oh,
yeah.
Just Random Thoughts. This is the Just Random Thoughts podcast. So if you're listening, friends, family, or whoever, thank you for tuning in. So I am Will. This is Raul.
Nice to meet you guys.
So basically the idea of this podcast is where it's about philosophy. We're just going to read a book about philosophy and then read it on our own and have pretty minimal discussion, if any at all, prior to recording. And then we hit record and then hash out our thoughts, try to answer the central question of the book on our own, give our interpretations, our reactions, our own arguments from the book, and then hopefully that leads to some engaging, fun, interesting dialogue.
Yeah, and hopefully you guys could learn something. Like, disagree or agree with us doesn't really matter. We're just here to have fun and just talk about cool topics. And today we're talking about the book Symposium, written by Plato, and it's just a discussion based off Socrates talking to a bunch of people at a party. And the theme of the party is talking about love. So, Will, I'm going to ask you the hard question first. What do you think love is?
Well, for me, love is really just more about wishing, genuinely wishing good for another person, without any sort of questioning of that. Sometimes when I don't know if you're angry at somebody and you try to wish someone good things to them, you can feel that resistance.
Yeah.
It's like wishing someone good things, wishing them happiness, wishing them freedom from suffering, wishing that all of their hopes and dreams be realized without any of that resistance, that maybe some resentment may be there causing that resistance.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. When I was thinking about a definition of love and what it consists of, I was thinking, okay, love to me, what is it? For me, love is acting caringly. You have to care for the person. You have to be loyal to the person. And then I found myself thinking, these are two good qualities that I think platonic and romantic love have, is loyalty and caring. But then I kind of got to a point where I didn't know what else love had. Maybe acting in a way where you don't receive any direct benefit. So then that to me struck me as empathy. And then I was thinking, does love need empathy? Or is love a action of empathy? Or is there more to love? I don't know.
I could see empathy being a necessary condition for love.
Yeah.
Because it's if... I guess we kind of have to define empathy in a way. I think of empathy as just being being able to understand somebody, and not being without empathy is there's no remorse for other people if there's no empathy. So having remorse and understanding if someone is feeling some type of emotion, they're expressing that, you can feel that emotion, and you can understand it and you can respond to it effectively. To me, that's empathy. And if you don't have that, If you think of love without empathy, that just seems it's buffering, I don't see that being really possible. You have to be there has to be some amount of connection. And I think there is no connection without empathy. And love should have some connection, and therefore empathy is a necessary condition for love.
Okay. And another really cool thing that I don't know myself, but I try to answer too. I ask myself the question, where does love come from? Does it come from our mind? Does it come from our soul? Does it come from a combination of the both? Who knows? Depending on your metaphysical worldview, it changes the answer. So I'm just curious, where do you think love comes from?
Where do I think love comes from? That's a good question. I don't know. I think, this isn't going to directly answer that question, but I do think love is kind of physical in a way. Not necessarily Like obviously people's like with sex, obviously that's physical.
Oh yeah.
But like in my experience with meditation, which meditation I'm going to be bringing up a lot throughout this podcast and future episodes, because it always, a lot of the way I think about the world, I feel like is influenced by my meditation practice. But I feel like with love, when I'm practicing what we call metta meditation, I think it's from Tibetan Buddhism, or I'm sure other sects of Buddhism have some sort of version of this. And I think in Christianity, prayer, it can be very similar, where it's literally just like you're wishing good things for other people. Like you're repeating mantras. You imagine a particular person that you know, or maybe you don't know them. You don't have to know this person. Or it could be a pet. It doesn't have to be human. You kind of just imagine some sort of being, someone who's alive, and you wish them good things. And you just repeat mantras like, may you be free from suffering. May you repeat that like a bunch of times. You repeat, may all of your hopes and dreams be realized. May you experience all of the most wonderful things that the life in the world has to offer, like love and laughter, and maybe traveling the world, experiencing different cultures. For me, sometimes I like to picture the person laughing, because like, I don't know, like I feel like if that's just, that's like, laughter is like pure joy almost. Like the moment of laughter is like, that's to me, like that's the purest kind of joy. And that's kind of what I'm wishing for other people when I'm practicing metta meditation. Metta is Pali for loving kindness, I'm pretty sure. I'll have to double check that. We need a third person to like double, like
to fact check
us. Definitely. But anyways, when I do that, to bring it back to love being physical, you can feel your body change when you start to feel this love for this person, or sometimes multiple people, depending on how you're practicing the meditation. And so for where love comes from, I don't know, but it feels like it's emerging into like my body. Like my whole body is like tingling. I'm really aware of everything, every sensation in my body when I'm practicing this. And that's really how it influences my conception of love, is like wishing other good things for other people. And then you can physiologically experience your body differently prior to repeating these mantras for 5-20 minutes, however long you're doing it, sometimes for hours. I haven't done it for hours yet, but
so do you think wishing well, or just wishing no harm, and doing like mantras or prayer or whatever form that comes in, is a necessary component of love? Or do you think that's just where kind of love kind of manifests itself physically in terms of just wishing well for others?
I don't think that's, well, and you don't have to pray necessarily or meditate or repeat mantras to wish other people well. Yeah. You know? So I would not be so strict in saying that like, oh, you need to like pray to love people, or you need to like practice Buddhist meditations to like love people. But I would say that like, in order to love, a necessary component of love may be to wish other people well.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that being it. Because the opposite would be what?
Wishing bad things on other people. Yeah, spite.
Spiteful, hateful, angry. Things that aren't a part of love. But the thing is, I've had a conversation with other people before, and they told me like a necessary component of love to them is passion. And passion is a whole like spectrum of emotions, you know. I'm pretty sure you've gotten angry at people you've loved before, and it's been like an anger like you wouldn't have for some guy at the street, you know, like, oh, whatever, this guy just made me angry, it doesn't matter, no big deal. But my girlfriend made me angry today, or my dad or my brother or my sister or whoever you love dearly made you angry. Do you think passion is necessary or a vital component of love, both the beautiful and the ugly?
I gotta talk into my mic. Passion, I don't know, what do you mean by passion? Is it just like strong emotion?
I think, yeah, for the sake of this conversation, strong emotions, or maybe strong feelings towards a person better rather than strong emotion. Yeah,
it seems like you would need to have strong feelings towards them. I think, because I think that like to bring it back to, you know, practicing metta, is that, you know, wishing, like, repeating the words of like wishing someone well is not really sufficient.
Yeah.
You can just mindlessly say words and nothing really happens. The love is happening is when you can feel it.
Yeah.
Now, would I say if someone is like passionately in love with their partner and they're like super mad all the time at each other and they're really fighting, and then they're like fighting all the time, having intense fights, and then like they're the kind of relationship they just make up by just having sex and then it's all good, but then it just repeats, just anger. That's like, to me, I could see, I mean, maybe they really do love each other. I'm not trying to say that in that situation they necessarily don't, but I could see how there maybe not really be love there, and they're just sort of like angry at each other all the time, and then kind of using each other as like mediums for pleasure as well. And there's a lot of passion in that. So I would say that like, yeah, maybe it's a necessary condition, but it's certainly not sufficient. What do you think, though? Do you think passion's a part of love?
That was a hard question, because the person I was talking to asked me the exact same question, because I kind of almost disagreed with them, because they just as an anecdotal, they told me that if their partner cheated on them and they were passionate enough to show forgiveness, earn trust, and act in a way that they deemed I guess redeemable, they would continue to love them and continue to be their partner, while others might see that as like a total breach of trust and just end the relationship there in terms of romantic love. But I don't know. Maybe it is required. I think she does kind of have a point where passion does lead to forgiveness. And I don't know if that's like my Catholic background, growing up as a kid, saying that forgiveness is a really big form of love, because when you're able to forgive someone, you're in a way loving them. You're setting them free from their past. I don't know if that's enough to answer the question, but I think passion does play a part. I don't know exactly how, but I think it does.
No, that makes, I see what you're saying about forgiveness too. I think what you said about forgiveness was pretty spot on. But the part that I'm a little bit unclear is like, how do you get from passion to forgiving? Like, how does passion play into the forgiveness part?
You know, when someone breaks your trust, there's like really no logical, I guess, mindset or reasoning to forgive them. It's just more your emotion and your passion leading to that action, I guess. Because if you're strictly logical in the way you love someone or the way you think, logically speaking, if they cheat on you or they happen to break your trust in a really like big way, then logically speaking, they're going to do it again, or there's a possibility of them doing it again. So why trust them? But love or passion in this case can kind of override that way of thinking and lead you to acting in a more forgiveful manner. But I don't know. That's kind of like the thought process behind that, like correlating passion with forgiveness.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So you're saying that, like, say if someone cheats on you in a relationship,
yeah,
like the logical decision would be like, you can go into some inductive reasoning, be like, based off of the instances of the past, I'm going to make a prediction of the future. They're probably going to cheat on me.
Yeah.
But then the more emotional or more passionate decision, because you're so like in love with them, would be to forgive them.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's super interesting.
And forgiving them doesn't necessarily mean you're going to stay in the relationship.
Right. Okay.
It just means that could be interpreted as an act of love. Be like, I forgive you for XYZ reason. I don't wish you any ill harm. Like you were saying, another component of love we were mentioning.
Right. Okay. So I think now we're kind of going like, there's two different routes of like logical, like how you respond to someone when they cheat on you, like a logical way. Which would be just, okay, break up with them. If they did it once, they'll probably do it again. And there's like a break of trust. Yeah. Well, that is the break breaking of trust. But then like the more passionate, more emotional decision would be to forgive them, because that's like the passion aspect of love, and forgiving someone is an act of love. But if you're acting purely out of passion, you may not really, you might stay in the relationship, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like there's also maybe a medium between acting out of passion and acting logically. Because like you can also break up with them and hate them forever, and that's also passion.
That's very true.
So it's like, I feel like you can forgive them and break up with them. And if we want to go like the virtue between two vices, like you could kind of go like, okay, well, maybe logic is like the virtue between the two vices of overly passionate. Oh, or no, I want to say like maybe the right amount of passion with supplemented with logic, and between too much passion, and sort of, you know, you forgive them, you logically, you know, they're probably going to do it again.
Yeah.
And the trust is broken, so I'm going to break up with them, but I'm still going to love them, and just in a different way that can forgive them. And, you know, you free yourself of the resentment and the hate.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And that could be like an act of love towards yourself.
Yeah, that can. Yeah, no, seriously. Because, I mean, I think anyone who's taken a little bit of like reflection on themselves knows that like, if you don't, like, for not forgiving people hurts you.
Yeah, it does. And I think that's really funny that we talk about very briefly self-love, because our generation, at least, has brought up like self-love to the max. I think they're very big proponents of, you know, loving yourself, making sure your mental health is all good. And that just kind of came up to me right now. Does being mentally healthy need to be a requirement to love? I don't think so.
I don't know. Because, like, it really depends on how you think about love, obviously. But, because, like, sometimes I could see, like, I don't want to be, like, elitist about love, you know. It's like, oh, you have to be like this, like you have to like completely heal from all your trauma, you know, you're just like totally on the right wavelength all the time, now you can love. I feel like that's not really healthy, you know. Like, I feel like the most broken people who are the most fucked up, the drug addicts and like the I don't know, the people with schizophrenia, I don't know, I'm just naming people who have like the deepest like mental illnesses, like surely they can't just not be capable of love also, right? You know, I don't know. Where was I going with that?
Can I jump in real quick?
Yes, please.
Okay, because that question just popped up to me, because you often hear people saying, oh, I'm not ready to love someone right now because I'm dealing with my own stuff. Or they have mental health-related issues, such as depression, schizophrenia, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And these people often exclude themselves from relationships or being connected with others. And that might be a form of love, because they're not trying to inflict pain on anyone by removing themselves from the equation. That might be an act of love. And I'm just trying to think that with all these comparisons with love, like a universal aspect I've seen is not wanting to harm or not wanting to cause harm. But even when you love someone, you cause them harm. So not causing harm isn't a requirement, because you're going to cause harm no matter what, by accident or purposeful. But I think the main distinction between like loving someone is you're not causing harm intentionally. So your mental stability in that matter, I think, does matter if it just harms them constantly. And then the obvious choice for you, like the loving choice, would be to minimize that harm, either by bettering yourself or by removing yourself from the equation, I think.
Yeah. What do you mean by removing yourself from the equation again?
So that would just be like maybe talking to them less or cutting them off completely. Like, I don't know if you've seen the movie, I forgot what it's called, but it has Steve Carell and Timothée Chalamet. And Steve Carell's the dad, and Timothée Chalamet is the son. And Timothy is addicted to drugs. And Steve Carell is basically trying to help his son through his addiction. And he takes all forms. Like, he sends him to rehab, sends him to school, basically tries to allow him to do his best in life on his own. Financially, emotionally, he's always there for him. But Timothy keeps ending up taking drugs, and eventually Steve Carell's character, the father, can't take it anymore. And he has to cut off his son completely. And when he does that, only then does his son recover from his addiction. So he removed himself from the equation, and that was the most loving thing he could do, even though it might have been the hardest thing he could do.
Right. And that was like sort of so that his son wouldn't rely on him anymore.
Yeah.
Right. That was because I haven't seen the movie. Is it called Beautiful Boy?
Yeah, that's
okay.
what it's called.
Okay, I just found it.
And if I might add, even if he didn't leave, I still think that would be loving. It's really hard to decide what's the right choice and the wrong choice. And that all comes down to, I think, your freedom of, or I guess the freedom of action, what you determine to be the most loving action. Because, again, that's where loyalty comes in from. I will never leave this person no matter how much they're suffering, because I love them.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I guess you could also say that like it's kind of this is going to be a difficult one to untangle, but like sometimes I feel like love and attachment kind of are conflated because it's like,
how so?
So like I think this happens in romantic relationships, and this is not to say that like if you're attached to someone you don't love them, like you can be both, but I think sometimes a lot of times when like a breakup happens, it's painful because of the attachment aspect of it, but not because of the love aspect. Because remember, like the healing part of a relationship is also love.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like really what's painful is the attachment. At times, and it's kind of like, you know, it sounds like this movie, like Steve Carell's character had to let go of his attachment to his son.
Yeah.
And in order to love him this other way, you know, but if like really the best decision was to like completely cut off any sort of like financial resources and support for his son, that really is the best thing to do, the most loving thing. That's in complete contradiction, or it's like a conflict of interest with the attachment part of the relationship too.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's the attachment part that really hurts. So it's like one of those things, like to love someone, you have to let them go. It's kind of like you have to let go of the attachment part. That's what I think that might be. But how did we even get onto that? How did we, because I remember I asked you about what does it mean to take someone out of the equation? Remove yourself from the equation.
Yeah. I think that's what I meant too. It's just, for lack of a better words, you know, if you love someone, let them free. Let them free in what way? That's up to you. If letting them free from your presence, that could be something. Or that's mainly what I think it means, is you let them go. You let them, you know, decide who they want to be at the end of the day. And you still love them no matter what. But I think we often conflate love with responsibility.
How so?
Again, when you love someone, you feel responsible for their well-being. You want the best for them. But at times, like in the movie, you can't be responsible for someone totally. Like, you can only be responsible so much. I mean, even with parents and children, you can teach them, raise them with your morals and values, but eventually they're going to grow up and think on their own. And no matter how much you think this action or this lifestyle or these belief systems are correct, you can't be responsible for someone's way of thinking, really.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of like you don't want them to be dependent on you.
Yeah, and their way of being, like, at the end of the day, we are all individuals. And it's sad to say that you can't, not to necessarily say you don't need anyone, but you ought to be responsible for your well-being at the end of the day. because we are adults. At the very least, if you're an adult.
Yeah, if you're an adult,
yeah,
you're
if you're an adult, disclaimer.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it's also like, you know, by the time someone is an adult, like you can't make somebody happy. You can't like, you can help out, you know, you can like, you can, you know, not be an asshole to them.
Yeah. True.
Like, cause you know, you can make someone else feel unhappy, obviously. Like someone else has probably made you unhappy. You've probably made other people feel unhappy. But I feel like when you think of like big picture, the whole course of someone's life, obviously like it's going to be, they're going to, their own well-being is really up to their own mindsets and, how much responsibility they take for that sort of thing. Yeah.
I think one interesting thing from the book, even though we haven't kind of really talked about the book.
We haven't talked about the book yet.
But I'm going to bring this up now. Do you remember who Socrates was talking to? The lady? Diotima, yes.
Might be pronouncing that wrong.
We might be. But Socrates and Diotima are having this discussion, and she talks about like the stages of love, and I just want to get your opinion on it. The first stage being, we love the physical. We have an attraction for the physical body. You know, and that's kind of vain. So the next step is you love someone for their intelligence. That's how they framed it. But in modern terms, I'm assuming this would be intelligence and personality.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. And then thirdly, you learn to love a subject, whether that be math, English, philosophy, etc., etc. You learn to love something or an activity too. So like rock climbing, running, anything like that. And then the fourth step would then be loving all subjects. But what was her name again? Diotima or Diotima?
Diotima.
Diotima meant loving wisdom. You learn to love learning. And after that, you learn to love everything. You learn to love wisdom and people and nature and everything around you. Do you think that's how love ought to be? Like we ought to love everything? Or do you think it's impossible or we're incapable of loving everything?
I think we're fully capable of loving everything. I also think that, I think those stages are, it seems to make sense. I feel like if I think about my life, I think other forms of love kind of happen first. I think like love for your parents and your family.
Yeah.
Probably happens before any of that. I think that happens when you're an infant. Probably. I don't know.
Assuming
you had loving parents. I think you love your parents when you're like 6 months old. I don't remember, but
I don't think none of us do.
Yeah, that'd be cool if somebody does. Anyways, yeah, I think those stages it makes sense because it seems like it gets more mature as it goes.
Yeah.
Like obviously loving the body. I feel like that's the most like quick, easiest, obvious like source of pleasure that you'd be more attracted to that. This is. No, I'm not going to. I was going to say it's kind of similar to something in Hinduism, but I don't want to go there right now. I don't.
Is it just like a whole tangent?
It's a whole ass other tangent.
Oh, okay.
It's not really necessarily about love. Yeah, that's it. The stages. I think it makes sense. I wouldn't really try to follow it on your own. I think we probably all just kind of follow it naturally as we progress and as we mature and as we become more wise. Although I kind of think that it's one of those things, like when you get to that last stage of like loving the universe, I kind of think in like loving existence, loving reality. I know we kind of talked about that over the phone a couple days ago, but like to me, we're getting to like, that's like Buddha level enlightenment type stuff. And I kind of think that if we were to put stages, that would be the last stage. I think we're totally capable of that. I think it takes discipline though. I don't think it just happens like just kind of living our own ordinary lives, working, hanging out with friends, going out, maybe raising a family. Like it doesn't happen naturally. I think, or it does happen naturally, but you have to like cut out a kind of discipline, some sort of spiritual discipline that you have to sort of keep at for a long period of time before you get there.
Okay, so I kind of want to talk about that more because that's interesting. So you mentioned spiritualism. I'm going to touch on that right now. But first, you say naturally, like you get there naturally, but there's discipline. I can see some people getting there naturally.
Maybe some, yeah.
But I think it's going to sound weird to say, but I don't think it's natural just to love everything. I think you got to learn to do that. And that's where the discipline comes in. You got to be like consciously, like actively wanting to like learn to love everything. Because learning to love everything, like you said, is just like this level of like enlightenment or nirvana, like this pinnacle of love, I guess. And that's what they framed it as, the book. Like the one who observes the one true love gets to like see like gold and like life in its utter glory. And I think like sure that might just be romanticized, but I think there's a lot of practical use for it, because if you learn to love everything, you become a lot calmer. You become a lot more friendly, and you become a lot more understanding of people's situations. Then take a child, right? There are some very intelligent children out there, by the way, but like just the mindset of a typical 5-year-old or 10-year-old, they're not really caring about the hours their parents are putting in to feed them. They don't understand that. They don't understand that their words have effects on others, typically speaking. And then they're not even aware of like what love is. Do they really ask themselves, what is love to me? They might just assume love is like being nice or being attracted to someone. That's about it. And a lot of people go throughout their lives like that, just never asking what is love or how can I achieve a higher state of love. There are a few, but I was just wondering, like, how would you practice get into that ultimate pinnacle? You're talking about discipline and spirituality. Kind of curious what you were elaborating to.
Yeah, before I answer that question, I maybe have to hold your mic just a little bit closer, just looking at the waves here.
Is this better?
Yeah, that should be better.
Okay, cool.
I think mine was getting a little bit further away as well. Anyways, so how do you practice it? It kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, in a way, I've kind of already described it. Oh no, I haven't described it. I have talked about meditation, which it's basically, how I was saying, you imagine somebody, and you wish good things. Maybe you're picturing them laughing. To me, like, images kind of get me there a little bit quicker. Like, I don't know if it's someone who you know is in a relationship, that you picture them at their marriage ceremony. That's something I like to do for a friend of mine who's actually getting married soon.
Congrats to them.
Congrats to them. You know who you are. Like, I'll picture, or if I'm doing both of the people in the relationship, I picture them at their wedding at the moment right before they kiss, and there's like the priest guy who's in between them, and it's like that moment. I'll picture something like that, to try to, anyways. And so you then start to change who you're picking, and there's a like a sequence to it. You increasingly, the people that you are imagining, you're increasing the amount of complications you have in the relationship with that person. So basically, it's kind of like, there's like a difficulty level. It's like your best friend, you don't have any problems with, they're just great, hang out, it's all fun and games and laughing and good times when you're with them. That's like easy difficulty. It's going to be easy to feel love for them. And once you get that feeling where like I was talking about, like tingling, you feel the sensations in your body, you really feel like you want good things for them, you move on to someone who's maybe like a little bit more of a complicated relationship with. Okay. And then you start to feel that resistance again of like, there's like some things I've been neglecting with this person. But then, you continue to repeat the mantras, and eventually it goes away. And then you feel feel the loving kindness for them. Yeah. And you basically just keep increasing the amount of complications you have with the people in the relationship. That's one way you can do it. Another way is you kind of just start thinking about humanity and like different like crimes. Like, you basically just increase the amount of like complications with you personally, or like sometimes I like to think about different concepts like war and like really brutal aspects of war that like I sometimes listen to podcasts of like old former Navy SEALs, and they talk about some of their experiences, and it's like some of the kinds of people that they encounter.
Gnarly.
There's like some really like evil out there. I start thinking about that, and I start to then, even for those people, some of the most evil people in the world. I mean, this takes a while. I don't do this very often because I feel like that's just like a level of difficulty of this kind of meditation that I'm not really there yet. I've gotten to it a couple of times, but this is at this point I'm now leaving speaking from experience and more about the idea of meditation.
Some more theoretical.
I'm starting to get more theoretical now about how to answer, which would lead to answer the question, is that like and loving everything is that you take the hardest things that are to love, the hardest things to forgive, the worst parts, the darkest parts about yourself, the people you know, and the darkest parts of humanity, and you try to love that.
Oof.
And that's how you love everything.
And that's tough.
Yeah, because it's like if you think about the universe and you picture space and like Saturn and the stars and like the Grand Canyon, it's like, oh, I love the universe. Like that's easy. It's like, but like the universe contains a lot of other really messed up stuff. And if you're gonna say you love everything, you have to face that too.
Is that like?
And that's how you love everything. Is you try to love the worst things.
And I think that's a big concept in all philosophy. Is that duality?
Yeah.
Yin, yang, sun and moon, happiness, sadness.
There's a Carl Jung quote I want to look up real quick.
All right, let's hear it. But yeah, love is super dualistic, I think. And if you get to that pinnacle where you love everything, kudos, teach me how. I need to get there.
By then I'll be in robes and have no hair.
Living on a mountain.
Yeah. I'll be in the Himalayas.
But yeah, love's complicated. You know what's funny? We're talking about how to love and like what is it, and like we're getting answers, but at the same time I'm coming up with more questions, and am I ever gonna figure out what love is? I don't know.
This is one of the things I feel like I learned after getting a degree in philosophy, is that like we don't really know the answer to anything. It's like we just find joy and fun in talking about it and being like, we're gonna try. Oh, it didn't work. Okay, let's try another route. And it's like, well, that was kind of fun. You know, like we're just gonna keep doing that because it's cool. Yeah. Okay, so here it is. This is a Carl Jung quote. This is very symbolic. It's a lot more symbolic than I remember. No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell.
Interesting.
It's not really about love, but I feel like, you know, if you want to get really symbolic about what heaven is, you know, you could say that once you get to the point where you really love everything, maybe that's a state of heaven. Yeah. Maybe enlightenment and heaven are at the same place. I don't know. Maybe that's a different episode.
Yeah.
That's a different episode. But then but you know, if you want to get to that place, that like that very desirable place of, you know, loving everything, mm-hmm. you kind of have to go the other direction. You know, you have to go down to hell. You have to have your roots reach down to hell so you can grow to that better place.
And you understand everything.
Understand everything?
Not maybe understand everything, but in talks of love, you understand how to love the worst of the worst. And you understand love's nature, I guess. Or would that just be just enlightenment? I don't
maybe.
know. But I think it's interesting concept. I think I know how you're going to answer this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Okay.
Do you have to love the ugliness in order to be in love, or in order to practice love in a beneficial way? Because one may ask, why do I have to love the things that don't make me happy or make me feel good? Like, what is the point of it?
I think it's really only the point if loving everything is sort of
like your goal.
Yeah, like I think to be in love with your partner, you don't have to be like love the worst parts about humanity. Yeah. If you to love your parents, you don't have to love the worst parts about humanity. If you want to love humanity, you have to love the worst parts about humanity. You know what I mean? Like, okay, that's I went to that dark route because we were talking about everything. Yeah, and like what's contained in everything and how that's dark true. That can get. Mm-hmm. maybe when it comes to like a romantic partner or your parents, it's like maybe you do have to love the worst parts about them too if you really want to love them.
Yeah.
As a whole. So it's like that whole idea of like loving everything in the universe. If you want to love, I think you can kind of take like an analogy with that and saying that like everything about the person, not everything in the universe, but everything about the person you also have to love. And maybe how far, even with the most ordinary person, like how the darkest parts about all of us might be pretty dark too.
Yeah.
And you'd have to learn how to love that anyways. And I think that would be beneficial as well. How would that be how do you think that would be beneficial to love someone as a whole, including their darkest aspects of their personality?
How would that be beneficial to, okay, I'm going to say how it's beneficial to me personally, and to how it might be beneficial to society, because I think those are the two big ones.
Okay.
So to me personally, and maybe others around, it might be beneficial to love someone's darkest, ugliest side, because you have a dark and ugly side. And there's a sense of vulnerability. There's a form of acceptance there. If I'm pretty sure growing up, we've all had negative qualities in people that we saw that we didn't always like, but we accept it, because I think that's the beauty of being a human, is we're imperfect. So you have to love the imperfect as well. You can't just love perfection. Mm-hmm. And I think that sets a realistic standard to one, romantic love, but also friendships, because your friends aren't always going to make decisions that you agree with. And I think accepting it is one thing, but trying to help them understand it and move on from it would be another point. Or maybe for them to even accept the ugly parts of themselves that they don't. Because I'm trying to find a good example. Maybe one ugly part that you don't like about yourself is that maybe you're narcissistic, and you kind of put yourself first over everyone. And someone that you love accepts you for who you are, and they stick around, but they also try to show you how that dark part of you impacts others. And maybe you grow out of your narcissism, maybe you don't, but at least it's accepted, and at least it's known and can be discussed openly. And I think that's important, is having open discussions about your traits, but others as well. And society, how might that help is, I think it's good to have exposure to different worldviews, or at least, besides worldviews, I mean, different personality traits. Because people can't act one way. There's going to be people who are envious, people who are angry, people who are, maybe they just don't like you and they pretend to.
Yeah.
And then once it's known, you can love them. And then you can move on. You can leave too, because they don't like you. And they told you. I think that's loving. Instead of having to pretend, just move on and you love him. Be like, oh, damn, he didn't like me after all. Oh, well. But I love him still. Hope him the best.
Yeah, I have, for the beneficial part of society, I have a really good example that I just thought of. And this actually came up in our philosophy of law class. I forget what the context was, but what's it? Daryl Davis. That is a great example.
That's a great example.
Well, it's beneficial for society because, I haven't really listened to, I listened to one of his talks like years ago. I don't know. I'm not really up to date on what he's doing and how much, or the impact that he's having. For people who don't know who Daryl Davis is, he is a black man who goes out of his way to befriend KKK members, and will engage in discussion and dialogue. Perhaps has similar, no, actually probably not similar to what we're doing, but this is very different. But yeah, and so what the effect has been is that he's converted, I think it's in the thousands of like former KKK members to like
don't quote us on that number.
Don't quote us. Here, maybe I actually have my laptop. I could probably just check it. I will check that in a second.
But shout out to our classmate who wrote a paper on him, because now we know who Daryl Davis is.
He wrote a paper on him?
Yeah.
Oh,
Remember? That's what he wrote his paper on. If we're not diving too far.
I remember
into
he
it.
brought
Yeah.
him up in discussion, but I don't remember it being a part of his paper. Maybe I wasn't there when he talked about that.
And if I could relate something real quick to that, he was talking about accepting speech, and that's why like he used Daryl Davis as an example.
Right.
And I think that's relates to your point about accepting the ugliest parts of people, is that there's room for compassion and understanding between individuals with polarizing views or traits.
not just polarizing, but like hateful.
Oh, that's very true. In Daryl Davis's case, these guys are just hateful
Yeah.
and racist.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So, and like Daryl Davis has converted so many. I don't know if Daryl Davis talks about loving them,
That's true.
but if he's like talking to them and hearing them out and engaging in discussion, I'm sure love has got to be an aspect. I mean, that's a huge level of forgiveness. Does it go to willingly approach someone who you know like thinks the Earth is better off with your people of your skin color not here,
Yeah.
like, and willingly approach them and be like, I'll hear you out. You know, like, I feel like
Yeah.
that counts as, like, Daryl Davis probably doesn't say that he loves them. Maybe he does. I don't know. But I feel like that counts as, like, a kind of love for humanity, because he's hearing them out and he's listening to them. And well, that's another aspect, I think, of love is, or manifestation of love is listening. And if all those KKK members are really converting out of that cult, like, you know, that means they had to have been loved by him. I think
There must have been a connection.
a connection.
Even if like it was a mild form of love, those people grew out of their belief system or were converted totally. And I think this is assuming Daryl Davis did it out of love, he made humanity a better place. Or the world a better place. He made
100%.
humanity improve. Maybe not by the millions, but still.
According to NPR, in 2017, he had convinced 200. But that was 6 years ago.
Still impressive, by the way.
Yeah, I wonder if it says on his Wikipedia page. I can't find anything.
Oh, well, we don't have the exact number.
By 2017, he convinced 200 people.
Still a lot.
That's still fantastic. Thousands was a bit of an exaggeration, probably, but
I mean, imagine convincing 200 racist people to not be racist anymore.
to be less racist.
To be less.
It's a pretty low bar if you're in the KKK. Like you could definitely like leave the KKK and be like, oh, it's wrong to hate black people, but then you still have like subconscious biases and stuff, you know. But it's still a huge. It's progress. It's huge progress.
That's a huge win, though.
It is a huge win. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, damn.
But anyways,
if he
that's
didn't do it out of love, then what do you think he did it for?
recognition.
Yeah.
He's not that. If you want to do things out of recognition, I feel like you would do something else, though.
That's a tough thing. Oh, I was going to ask, what do you think motivates love? That just got me thinking. It's like, what's the driving force behind loving? Or love itself?
I'm definitely not like a biologist of any sort, but I feel like there's probably like the answer that would resonate with me is probably something evolutionary, because it's like, it probably like, you know, it's probably just good for survival.
Like ingrained, like just reproduction?
Yeah, like you fall in love with people to reproduce so that the species can keep going. But that also doesn't really account for, maybe you love family members and and friends. That kind of keeps everyone together. You know, we are a tribal species. We don't go out alone.
Yeah.
We survive in packs. At least that's what I know about early humans is that, like, you know, we're tribal and we survive together.
Yeah.
And I think maybe love is sort of the connection is what kind of like connects people in that. But then but I feel like that perspective kind of fails when we're talking about like this more of like a cosmic love of the universe and stuff, you know?
Yeah, especially like when you were talking about the spiritual components of love. again, that's why I think your metaphysical beliefs matter a lot, because that shapes how you view love. Because say you take a scientist who really doesn't believe in spirits, souls, or gods, he's probably going to think as love, as you just mentioned right now, a very biological, one-dimensional approach, which is it's a chemical reaction in your brain just that urges you to want to reproduce, that gives you the urge to, like, you know, have sex or get a partner. That's about it. But personally, I'm not satisfied with that answer. I would agree that it's a component of it.
It's at least that.
Yeah, at the very least, it's that. But I think it's more.
I think to say that it's more than that is it starts to go a little bit beyond like what we can. It's hard to go. It feels like it's more based off the human subjective experience. It feels like it's more, and I think whether or not it actually is or not, it almost doesn't really matter. The fact that it feels super profound to us is what matters.
Okay.
You know, sometimes, you know, people are like, love is like present in everything in the universe. Love is everywhere. It's kind of like, I don't know, maybe. But I feel like, you know, like that very like atheistic scientist sort of conception of love just being mere chemical reactions in your brain that are served to help us survive. You know, maybe it is that. Sure, I think that's fine with me if it is. But it feels like it's more. Anyways, but that was an example of like how metaphysics influences how your conception of love. How does metaphysics influence how you think about love, or maybe just different ideas of love?
You know what's funny? And I guess if we're getting personal with me, I'm an agnostic. I don't know.
Okay.
So I don't know if there is a God. I don't know if there is a soul. I'm kind of debating, talking about it. But it's things like love that make me believe there is, or make me want to believe that there is. Because not necessarily, like, having chemical reactions in your brain isn't inherently bad. You know? That's just what it is scientifically. But it's like love to me, like if I could just put it simply, it would be like no matter how much talking we're doing, I think you have to like feel it. And it would be trying to describe to a blind person what you see outside. Like you can describe it like in perfect visual detail with language, but he will never know what it's like to actually see it.
Oh, and that's what love
is. What love is. Like we can describe it. We can put all these components to it and all these restrictions to it, but you will never truly know what love is until you feel it. Now that feeling may be subjective, and that's where the issue might be, where like you're not really feeling love, you're feeling puppy love, or you don't really love them, you just want to use them sexually, or you don't love them, you just have a unhealthy infatuation with them or obsession or whatever. And I think there's like really like fringe cases where you're able to easily deduce whether they love them or not, or they're obsessed or not, or they're just spiteful. But I think in most cases where it's between ordinary people, it's kind of hard to tell whether or not you love someone, because it's like you were saying, it's a human subjective experience, and it might be different to all of us, it might not be. And I think that's the scary part. It's just we're trying to find these universal aspects that are in love, and we have agreed on some, like empathy, wishing well, not wanting to cause harm. And I think I forget the other ones we were talking about, but
I think those are the main three.
Yeah, the main three.
Or maybe if it's like loving everything, you have to love some darker stuff. But yeah,
that too. But I think that's the beginning of it, is understanding that love to you may not be these requirements, but to a lot of others it may be. And I think that's the hard part, is like, or I guess the stigmatizing part or the polarizing part, whatever you want to call it, is putting that line in the sand where you're like, you don't love and this is love. And I think that's hard to decide. And I think that's what we're kind of like aiming at, but not totally aiming at, because that kind of defeats the purpose. But I think human emotion and human feeling have a very huge part in love. And that's kind of where like the logic goes away.
Oh, and maybe another thing is passion. That was another
Passion.
Like,
Yeah,
it sounds
that.
like passion is maybe a big part of your conception of love. Oh, passion, that's not really a metaphysical thing, but
Oof, I know it's so hard to like nail down. But I think if I had to give a definition right now that would satisfy me at the very least, would be love is a feeling of everything. Because you feel everything when you're in love.
that is... Did I just knock... Oh, no, okay. I thought I knocked over my water. That is... Okay. I have a couple things I just want to say. Like, your analogy with, like, the color thing, describing to a blind person, that was perfect. That made so much sense. Like, you can't really describe what love is. Yet, like... So it seems like sort of like our, metaphysical, like, descriptions or beliefs seem like it's kind of... It will always fall short and really capture... Or everything will language will fall short of capturing what love is. So we should just end the conference. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, guys, thank you.
All right, the episode is over. Anyways,
that is the definition I have right now in this point in time in my life.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just love is such a weird thing.
It is a weird thing. I was asking some friends about love, and this is one that I did not anticipate as an answer.
Let's hear it.
He was talking about love of inanimate objects.
Like,
and I was like, what do you mean? He was like, well, some people love their car. He's like, some people love, what was another example? Like maybe a painting, or like a musician may love their instrument. And it's like, there is a kind of love for physical things. And I was like, I didn't really know how to respond to that. Cause I was always thinking, cause we were just talking about wishing well, connection and empathy and passion.
Yeah, like love between people.
Like, yeah, like connection and empathy and wishing well. That you don't wish well for an inanimate object because it doesn't have any experiences, unless you're like a panpsychist, which is a completely other thing. Have you heard
okay, yeah, that goes totally different.
Yeah, but generally speaking, we don't think that inanimate objects have conscious experiences.
Before I go, if you don't know what a panpsychist means, it basically means you think everything has consciousness.
It flips the consciousness problem on its head.
Yeah.
Like, oh, how does conscious arise from matter? It's like, well, no. How does matter arise from consciousness? And we should do an episode on that. That would be fun.
Yeah, that's a topic for a different time.
Yeah. But anyway, so love of inanimate objects.
Yeah.
Like, I think the one that really is probably common is the love for a car. Like you bought a nice, like, I don't know, like a Nissan GTR or something. It's some really cool car. Like you love that car. I have one of them, I have two different things for that, I think. But do you have any intuitions or immediate reactions to that idea of a love for an inanimate object?
Okay. I think this might be a hot take. But I think really like the only thing I can see myself truly loving that's an inanimate object would be nature.
But is it inanimate though? Because like plants are alive.
Yeah. I guess, no, they kind of don't fall into it. But, okay. Let me rephrase then. Personally, I can't love an inanimate object. I can just like it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, like, if we're talking about inanimate objects, like a car. I can't see myself loving a car to the point where I love a person. I think it'd be a different type of love.
Yeah.
Like, I would love my pet way more than I love my car.
Right.
Or, let's get down to, like, I would love a tree more than I love my car. Like, if I planted a tree, I would have more an attachment to that tree than I did to my car. Because if my car broke, I just get a new one. It's not like, oh, I need the exact same model. I don't really care. If it gets me to point A to point B, that's all that matters. But if someone cut down my tree that I grew for, like, let's just not even say like years. Like, let's just say I just freshly bought it from Home Depot. And then I gave it a name, and I was like, you are now Timothy, the tree. And Timothy got chopped down the first day. I would be super sad. Because the trees kind of have a living component to it. Whereas inanimate objects aren't. They can't feel, they're not alive. So to me, they don't really hold the same value.
Yeah. No, I could see the value part. But maybe would you say that, for something to receive love, it must be capable of giving it back?
Can you repeat the question one more time?
In order for something to receive love, must it be capable of giving it back? Like the car won't love you. The car is not capable of love. It doesn't have that capacity. But you can love your pet because your pet probably loves you, or at least it has the capacity to love you back. Can you only love things that have the capacity to love you back, or have like the kind of maybe in order for love to be loved, does it have to be the possibility of it being mutual need to be there?
I don't think so. Like nature. I love nature.
Yeah, because
nature can't love
you.
me. Yeah.
Plants don't love you.
Yeah, they don't love me.
At least I don't think.
No, they don't.
Nah.
They don't. But I love nature.
Yeah.
And I would hate to see nature like fall. And again, this goes back to animals. I love all animals, but at the same time, I know they don't love me. Like if I saw a tiger, I'd be like starstruck by it. But if it would just eat me, even though like no matter how much I love it, like if it was hungry, it's gonna kill me.
But maybe it has the capacity to love you. Because have you seen those people who like will raise a tiger and then the tiger will come up and give it a big hug?
Yeah,
That's what I mean by the capacity.
Okay.
But I guess it doesn't really count because you could love a tree and a tree probably doesn't love you back.
Or let's even go with people.
Okay.
Like in my lifetime, I have loved some people that never loved me back.
Right.
And I don't regret it, like it is what it is. And that's what life is sometimes. You love someone that doesn't love you back. And I think that's okay. I mean,
but they have the capacity to love you back. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, they do have the capacity, I guess. The theoretical capacity, I don't think is a requirement still, though.
Okay.
Because there's been moments where you love someone, but they're not going to feel the same way ever again.
Yeah.
But your love does change. So I don't know if that satisfies the answer, but...
No, I'm looking for, like, the kind of answer I'm looking for is, like, an example of something that you could love, but can't love you back.
Oh, that can't have the capability.
It doesn't have the capacity.
Besides plants and nature.
Yeah, I think plants are probably like... I kind of love the plants I have here, like right behind you. I think they're in the shot.
Yeah, they're pretty.
I named them when I got them. I forgot their names now, but...
You don't love them.
I guess not. No, I don't love them. No, I love them. I forgot their names. That doesn't mean I don't. Maybe that's a new requirement. You have to remember their name.
Yeah, at the bare minimum, like of the spreadsheet.
Yeah, remembering their name is a necessary but not sufficient requirement or condition for love.
Don't forget your boyfriend's names, guys, or your girlfriend's names.
Well, that's it.
Or partner's names.
Or memory. Well, maybe memory has an aspect as a role in love because, like, remembering anniversaries, remembering birthdays. It's like you kind of think of that as like, they remembered my birthday. Or if it's a romantic partner, it's like you forgot my birthday. Do you even love me? You know?
No, that's interesting because I'm gonna ask you this thought experiment.
Okay.
If someone you knew had Alzheimer's and they were put in the hospital and they forgot you, would they still love you?
Dude, that's a big question. I don't know. Probably not.
So memory has to be a part of love.
Dang, but like, yeah.
Like you need that connection of past experiences in order to love. I don't know if that's necessarily by itself, like it's not sufficient to warrant love, but it might be a necessary component again. There might just be a lot of like necessary components, but on their own they don't stand alone to say it's love or to merit love. but a bunch of them together do. And memory might just be
Yeah.
a really big one. Because how do you love something you don't know?
Yeah. Or yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I guess there is a knowledge aspect to love and remembering. Yeah.
Do we need epistemic?
Do we need
Well, and
the epistemology of love?
Yeah, do you need epistemic virtue or access to love? Whoa.
Whoa, that's Plato did not cover that in his book.
Yeah, they did not talk about it in this much detail, guys, but go read it. It's a great book.
epistemic access to certain things about what you're loving.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It would have to be. Because
There's
like,
no way around it.
yeah, I mean, imagine if you didn't know, like, but you can love people you don't know. But you have to kind of know some things about them in order to love them.
Yeah.
Like what I was talking about, this meditation thing, like there are people, I've listened to podcasts where they're like, they'll see a stranger and then they'll make that random stranger that they just saw for a moment their like object of loving kindness for like an hour or something as like an experiment.
Yeah.
But there is still knowledge required for that, because you have to have knowledge of their existence to make them the object of love.
Yeah.
You know that they exist because they just walked by.
Yeah.
So there is epistemic requirements to love, I guess.
Yeah. And for those that don't know what epistemology or epistemic means, it just means the study of knowledge.
Yeah, study of knowledge. Like epistemic access is like what we have access
to knowing.
to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In simpler terms, epistemic access just means what's disposable or available to you in order to know something.
Yeah. Exactly.
So that is a requirement for us, I guess, now.
Yeah, if you really want to get to, yeah,
The nitty gritty, it has to be a requirement.
It has to be. Yeah, and at the very like baseline, you just have to know that whatever object of love has to exist. Or people say they love God.
And they have no epistemic
We don't have.
access
Oh,
to God.
this is definitely like more controversial, but I think
that's a big controversial one. Yeah.
But like, I kind of hold the position that we don't have epistemic access to the existence of God, yet people love God. Oh, but okay, here's what we do have epistemic access of: the concept of God. So people who say they love God, or maybe if the atheists are right, then they love the concept of God.
And if they're right, well, they actually do love God.
And if they're right, then they really do love God.
Yeah,
That's just like
yeah.
kind of like I'm trying to stay within the epistemic boundaries of access here. So
Yeah, see, that's what it's depending on your metaphysical beliefs, man. It does shape your love.
it does. Well, I feel like metaphysical beliefs will like change everything about
That's
how you think
true.
of everything.
Those are metaphysics is huge, man. Like,
Yeah.
it's such a like pivotal but like silent little role in our lives. And silent, I mean, because a lot of people really just believe what they're brought up with.
Yeah.
Just don't. There's no need to like question it. They're like, that's how life is, you know.
Yeah, or like they
But
don't
not
even,
to say you guys don't question. Not saying that.
or not even like some people don't even know what it is that they were brought up with because they didn't bother to venture what would be outside of it to compare it.
Yeah.
But anyways, how did we get onto that?
We were talking about epistemic access
Oh,
being a
how
requirement
you-
for love.
Oh, because I was talking about remembering someone's name. Like maybe
Yeah.
you have to remember someone's name as like a requirement for love,
Yeah.
as like kind of a joke, but maybe not
Yeah.
really. So there's like knowledge about the person or about the person that you're loving may be necessary to love them.
Yeah.
And also, like knowledge about them is maybe an act of love. It's like you took the thought and effort to remember something about them. I think can definitely be an act of love. Like, if you forgot your girlfriend's birthday, she might be a little bit upset with you. But if you always remembered and she never had to remind you when it was coming up, that would be an act of love. Or you always remember the anniversary, or you remember what her favorite snack is, and she's kind of feeling down. Or you were telling me the other day, like you like made her pokey one time.
Oh yeah.
You know that she likes pokey.
So
That's knowledge, and that you need that knowledge in order to like to act. Well, I guess the act of love is making the pokey, but also the act of love is that remembering that of what something that she liked.
Yeah. There's so much. It's funny because I said love is the feeling of everything. Like you feel everything.
Oh,
when you're in
right.
love.
I wanted to get back to that. I forgot about
Yeah.
that.
And here we are giving like bare bones, like logical assessments of it. I think that's funny. Love is both logical and feeling. I think to get like a really, and this is something that might be controversial to say, like in the philosophical world, but I think human emotion does play a bigger part in philosophy than we like to let on.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is an aspect of us, and I think some people might deem it like maybe a lesser part of us because they have like logic and reason as king.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if we take a look outside, that's not true.
Yeah.
Just the way the world operates now isn't run on logic and reasoning alone. There's a lot of emotion in there.
Yeah, you can't really. I mean, some people, I mean, maybe think and operate with less emotion, but it's hard to really separate it. I remember I had a friend of mine send me a TikTok about, they were quoting Nietzsche, and I forget the guy's TikTok, but he kind of talks about philosophy. I'd have to pull up the link. I have to go to Facebook Messenger. My friend sent me this link, and he was talking about the basic idea, from what I remember off the top of my head, is that, like, you know, I think he was quoting Nietzsche, and he was saying that, like, if a philosopher doesn't know how to dance, that you shouldn't trust their opinion. Which sounds crazy. It sounds crazy, but it's like, okay, I'm actually going to butcher this. I should just pull it up real quick.
If a philosopher doesn't know how to dance, you can't trust them.
Because they haven't experienced that part of the world yet, and there's too much resentment in their worldview, and that's kind of contaminating their philosophy, because they haven't really, like, experienced the sort of, I guess, joy. I have to look it up.
I mean,
what do you thought? I mean, I think I'm kind of putting my own spin on it a little bit.
Yeah, Nietzsche was a guy. Yeah, that's all I have to say about him.
Yeah, we could probably do a whole episode on him.
Yeah, he had a lot of hot takes.
I feel like he had a lot of hot takes that were applicable to like modern politics now. That could be a whole episode. I mean, that's going to be a controversial ass episode. So maybe not.
I mean, why not? I mean, you know what, this is just off topic, but I think controversial topics need to be more accepted in open dialogue.
Yeah.
Nowadays.
I think so too.
Like,
people are quick to shut each other down.
I think there's a need to be open-mindedness, and a lot we can learn from Daryl Davis.
Mm-hmm. From, like, you know, I mean, not to put a cliche here, but, like, love is, we need a little bit more love in our, like, dialogue when it comes to, like, society and politics and stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's like sometimes people have disagreements, and then they just, like, the love is gone because they have this massive disagreement. But sometimes what I've noticed is that a lot of people's disagreements is like, oh, this person's opinion is hateful and is without love. And maybe sometimes it's true. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I think they're just projecting their own hate onto this person's opinion that they disagree with. It's like, this person that's not actually a hateful opinion. They're not actually without love when they have that opinion. It's actually, you just hate that their perspective so much that you're labeling it as hateful from your own hate. Like, you're projecting your hate onto them. And I think I can't give any examples right now because I haven't thought about it that in that much detail, but I think that happens constantly. And if we kind of, like, give people the benefit of the doubt, it's like, okay, I'm not going to assume this person, like, is hateful yet. You know, I might hear them out. I'm going to show them love as difficult as it might be with this, like, really jarring opinion. But and, you know, maybe they'll respond when they see me listen to them. Maybe that I always find that helps. Like when we were talking to someone you have a serious disagreement with, like if you really show that you're listening, you're making eye contact, you're nodding, and you're like, you're not interrupting them. Like they will usually give you that same sort of, when it's your turn to talk, once feel satisfied and heard, they'll listen. They're much more likely to listen you out. He will listen and hear you out. And I think I think that listening in those ways are kind of acts of love, kind of like in a Daryl Davis sort of fashion. Although I don't think they're usually that dramatic, the disagreements that I'm talking about. Sometimes people treat them as if they are, but
I think you make a good point, and I think maybe this could be for a different episode or not, but I think love's role in politics would be really cool to talk about. I mean, if we start loving one another more, and by loving, maybe this might be another word, empathizing with one another,
mm-hmm.
and really coming to understand each other's arguments, and if they hold any merit, and they're not acting in ill will, or what was I gonna say? Or they don't have any like logical fallacies, like red herring, straw man, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they're genuinely just trying to convince you, or genuinely trying to show you their perspective. I think that's what we need more of today. And especially with friends and family. Because, I'm pretty sure we've all been on the internet and we all know the holidays are hot, controversial topics if families have different political viewpoints.
Yeah, right. And religious ones too.
Yeah, and I think love, in a way, is understanding.
Yeah, I think, or at least the effort to understand is definitely an act of love.
A better phrase for it.
Yeah.
Or a better way to put it is the effort to understand.
Because it's hard to understand people sometimes. It's because people have such radically different experiences and opinions. But I think attention is something I haven't really talked about just quite yet.
Yeah, we haven't.
But like attention and like listening, like paying attention to somebody, like really giving somebody undivided attention, especially when they're angry. A lot of times when people are, like I've found like when people are angry and usually it's because they're not, a lot of times they haven't been heard. And it's kind of like, and they're not really being loved, because it's like if you're like shouting into the abyss all the time when you're trying to talk to people you care about and they're not really listening, you feel unloved when you're not heard. That's true. When you're not heard. And it's sort of like, in order to really listen to someone, you have to give them your undivided attention. So I think attention's sort of like a prerequisite for listening, to really listen. And so like the act of listening, the act of paying attention, those are acts of love. And when you really do it, the person will feel loved now because now they're heard. Now they feel heard.
Yeah.
Hopefully they actually are. They don't just feel heard. But yeah, so I think that's a huge, listening and attention, that's a huge, huge one for me at least.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I think some person or some people may find that line of reasoning like not convincing enough to warrant love. Because you can do all that and not love the person. You just be respectful.
But are you hearing them to the fullest extent now?
Yeah, I think that's where you start getting the divide, is if you actually have the empathy and love for the person, you'll come to a better understanding? Or do you think, like, let's just say me and you both heard the same talk or the same speech or the same dialogue between, let's just say like Mr. LG over here was talking to us right now, and you loved LG and I didn't, but I came to understand LG more than you did because I listened more.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say it's because you don't love LG enough that you didn't come to fully understand the argument or his perspective or his point of view or whatever?
I don't think I was putting love into action enough in that moment.
Oh, okay.
That's what I would say. And I think you can really listen to someone and give them undivided attention, and maybe you're doing it for some other means that they don't know about, and that would certainly not be love. I'm not really sure what an example of that would be. but I'm sure it happens. But I think you could do that and not love them. But if you are loving them, like you're actually putting it into an action, like it's a verb, love is a verb, you are listening.
Yeah.
You would have to, that's like, yeah, love is, as a verb is definitely, listening is one of those things, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what's one thing we didn't really get into? And I talked about it very briefly. Like one criteria for love for me was acting without any direct benefit towards you.
Okay.
And that kind of led me to thinking right now to altruism.
Okay.
And I know it's a hot topic to say whether or not altruism exists, because let me give you an example I had in my community college ethics class a really, really long time ago. I might butcher this example, but in my book, there was a soldier, and the soldier was in a Humvee with like 4 other guys, and a grenade gets tossed in there, and the soldier covers up the grenade and takes the whole impact and dies. One would say he acted altruistically. There was no direct gain from him dying. He was doing what some might call the most loving action, which was sacrificing his own life for his friends and what some might consider his brothers in combat. But some may argue that the soldier was thinking, if I take this grenade, I'm going to get like the Medal of Honor even if I'm dead. I'm going to be in the news. I'm going to be a hot topic. There's going to be fame and glory with my death.
Right.
So there is an external resource right there, or an external motivation,
right,
or external motivating factor,
right,
to be there. And this is even like used with mothers. Like mothers love their children because if they didn't, they would feel guilty and they would hate themselves. So they're acting in a way that directly benefits them.
In the sense that they don't experience the guilt.
In the sense they don't experience the guilt. And I was just wondering, like, what's your take on that?
Okay, that's a really good question. I think that it's impossible to really... I think that it's impossible to get away from trying to say that nothing benefits you. Or here, let me say that a little bit better. Like, when you're saying love is like, oh, there's no direct benefit for me, that would be love. And a lot of people, I think the counter argument is like, well, you can't really, everything that you would do for another person, there's some way that it benefits you. I think there's always going to be something about something that you could do that's good, that has some sort of benefit for you.
Yeah.
And I don't think that necessarily invalidates the goodness or the altruisticness of doing such an action. Like the person who like jumps on the grenade for fame and glory, that's probably a little bit selfish, you know, even if they really are sacrificing themselves, they're in pursuit of a legacy that will live on for a long time and honor and fame. But what was I saying? You know, but with the mother, it's like, yeah, she's directly benefiting by not feeling guilt by taking care of her child. But it's also like, how much of that really is the factor of what's motivating a mother? Yeah. You know, I guess that's kind of the problem with that. But maybe, I mean, there are cases where there's mothers who abandon their children. That happens. So in those cases, it's sort of like, maybe you should try to avoid that guilt that you're going to carry on for the rest of your life. And maybe you should do it for yourself to take care of that child. So it's like, oh, but then it goes back. It was like, in such a situation, would that be love? Yeah. I don't know. I think, no, I don't think that's love. But I think, okay, so I think for love, the things that motivate you would be selfless. But selfless or good for other people. That's what that would be more an act of love. So like the motivation of your actions is partially necessary for whether or not an action is out of love or not. Right.
Okay.
Do we agree on that?
Okay, so can I like just say something and then see if this is what you're kind of getting at? So what I learned in a club for philosophy, which was like a speech and debate team, basically, there's this bioethical principle called non-maleficence. And I had this, which basically means you will do no harm to the patient that you're attending as a doctor or whatever. But I had this effect called the double effect, which was you knowingly do not cause harm. But by doing that, there's going to be some after effect that might cause harm. So I guess what I'm trying to relate it to with love is that you act selflessly. And by doing that, there's the unintended consequence of acting selfishly or getting a direct beneficial gain. That wasn't your intention, but it's just an effect of your action. Is that kind of what you're trying to get at? Is that it's more of an unintended consequence? Even though it's a known consequence, it's still not your intention to?
Yeah, that is what I guess it may not be unintended necessarily, but it definitely could be. It's like, I guess, like kind of the driving force to a certain action would have to be for somebody else. But, you know, part of you, but like as a driving force, as in like the main reason, like what the ultimate like tipping point of like why you decided to do a certain thing was for the goodness of another person. That would be love. And there can still be some motivation. It's like, well, I'm going to do this because it's make me feel good. I'm going to donate a bunch of money to charity because as soon as I like write the check and give it to whoever or put it in the mail, I don't know how that works. I don't have enough money to donate to charity. I don't know how it works. But like as soon as you like the payment is official, like you probably feel good after that. I can imagine. And if you're partially doing it for that feeling, I don't think that necessarily means it's not love. But I think if doing it for the good of the people that are doing it for the good of the people who are gonna benefit from that money, as your tipping point is of what actually motivated you to actually make the payment and to give that money away, I think then it's love. Even if part of it is like I don't know, 60% of your reason to donate to charity is for the goodness of the people that will benefit from that money, and then 40% of it is like, ooh, this is gonna feel good. I think it's still love if it's I think if it's like only for that good feeling, then I don't really think it's love. You know, but if you're a consequentialist, then it's, well, that's ethics. That's not really love.
Does love have ethical
well maybe
boundaries?
It's like, maybe where I was going to go is that like you could probably take more of like a consequentialist view of love, and that your intentions don't really matter as to whether or not an action is love, but it's consequence of your action then is that out of love. Because right now, like I'm taking more of it, like I'm kind of like a deontological, I should probably avoid using that word. I'm taking more as like your intentions really matter as to whether or not an action is love, as an action of love. But it could be, you could take a consequentialist view on that. I don't know. What do you think about that?
It might sound more robotic at first glimpse. Like
maybe
I only care about the consequences of my like loving actions or actions that then in turn create love. But I don't think it would be that bad, because then you become really aware of what you're doing. You're kind of more self-critical, which might be helpful. But I think there's no harm in it, because sometimes everyone does it too. I mean, you do an action, or before you do it, you think about the consequences. You know?
Yeah.
And then you think about how that might harm a person. And if the action you're doing harms a person more than it, I guess, gives you pleasure, then that's a bad action in terms of loving someone. So I don't think it's bad. But I think love needs to have... I think love does need to have a form of intentionality to it. Because even with the consequentialist framework, your intention is to reduce the amount of harm. you're not just acting aimlessly.
Yeah.
Because if you did have a consequentialist approach and you wanted the consequences to be as bad as possible, then I would argue that's a really bad framework to hold. Or even if like you had a deontological or an intentionality focused approach, and your intention was to be a dickhead, I'd be like, your intentions are wrong. So I think that's where I would say like love takes its manifests itself. It's when you have good intentions. And if you have good intentions and bad consequences, I would still consider that love, but it may be an act of negligence.
Yeah.
Because more often than not, we've hurt people that we've loved by accident, even though we've had good intentions.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think the intentionality part's pretty important.
Yeah.
It's also like with ethics. I feel like a lot of people, and when they think about like consequentialism versus deontology, which is basically just like the intentions, like how much intentions versus the consequences of a certain action is how we morally evaluate someone's. I'm gonna rephrase that. How we morally evaluate someone's actions, is it based off the consequences of their actions or their intentions? And so the intention one is usually often called deontology. Anyway, just to sort of paraphrase what that is. I feel like a lot of times in ethics, people they don't really pick one or the other most of the time. I'm sure there are people that are, but it's like, intentions matter and consequences matter. So we're just going to factor both into the equation of how we morally evaluate someone's actions, rather than just going, only the intentions matter, only the consequences matter. And I feel like we could probably do something similar with love. It's like, intentions, I'm definitely intuitively, I'm leaning towards like intentions really matter behind whether or not an action is an act of love. But, I feel like consequences do matter to some degree. They should be factored into the equation if we were to evaluate whether an action is an act of love or not. That's just my intuition. And I'm trying to think of an example now of like, how would I incorporate some of the consequences of someone's actions as to how I would evaluate whether or not it's an act of love. I don't know.
The consequences?
Yeah, like I'm trying to think of an example of like how I would evaluate someone's act of love, or how I would evaluate someone's act, whether or not it was an act of love, through their consequences of their action. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay,
so maybe I have an example.
Okay.
So let's say I had no intentions to do so, right? But let's just say this is going to be a really simple example. Let's just say I held the door open for my girlfriend and I didn't intend to do it, but it made her day. Is that an act of love, even though like I just subconsciously did it? Or like by accident, let's just say I was just staring off into like a tree. Or let's make it even worse. I might get in trouble for this. But
Okay.
let's just make it even worse. Let's say I'm holding the door, right? When I open it, I look back and I see a beautiful woman and I just stare at her. But my girlfriend doesn't see and just assumes I'm holding the door open for her. Is that an act of love?
Probably
the intention wasn't there and it was a bad intention, but the consequence led to my girlfriend being really, really happy for the rest of the day. And she's like, "Oh my God, you love me. You're such a gentleman. Chivalry's not dead. Blah, 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 blah." Yeah.
Well, are you saying like you opened the door for your girlfriend, not because you were holding the door open for her, because you're just like,
I was
you
gawking.
were fixated for a moment.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good, dude. That was good.
I just
thought that's a good
I
thought.
might get in trouble though.
Okay, yeah. Well, that doesn't. This is a hypothetical
This
scenario.
is a hypothetical scenario.
Totally unrealistic. Never
it
happens.
would never happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, that makes a lot of sense. I would say it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, because I feel like the intentions in that scenario, are important.
Okay.
Important enough. Like, but I'm trying to think maybe of another example.
Can I just interject really quick?
Sure.
I think what we're confusing with intentionality is genuine. like genuine actions.
Well, I feel like a
Because
genuine action is just
proper
an action
intentions?
with proper intentions. Yeah.
Okay, so you have to be genuine in order to love. You can't fake it.
Right. Yeah.
Because you can fake good behavior all you want.
Right. Exactly.
Is that where you're trying to get at?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that was what I was trying to get at earlier. Like, there has to be like, if you want to go kind of Kantian, and with how we think of an act of love is like, you're not behaving well because you know it'll benefit you later to have good rapport with somebody. That's not really love. I mean, I feel like in professional environments, I mean, we're on good behavior and we're nice to people, not necessarily because we love them, and perhaps it should be because we love them, but oftentimes it's because we want good rapport with them.
Yeah.
Because we know that connection in that sort of field of whatever subject it is will benefit you.
Yeah,
you
in
know,
the long run.
Right. And I'm not trying to say you shouldn't do that. I mean, maybe you shouldn't, but I think that's just not love. I don't want to talk about the ethics of that, but it's just not love, to do that, necessarily. And I think that kind of reveals that the intentions do matter, whether or not something is love. You could kind of treat everyone with love, and then the sort of benefits happen as a side effect. I think that's still love. You know, you could still have all the good connections and the benefits of good connections with people in your field, but by loving them, by genuinely from your heart, authentic love, intending to love them, you know.
And I think we can tell most of the time.
Yeah, you can tell. Some people
when
are just kind of
genuine or when it's not.
Yeah, I think so.
I've had plenty of people just chit chat with me in school or work, and it's just, you can tell like they're just there for either something you can offer, or if you can offer something to them, and it's just like, it's like almost scripted talk.
Yeah, well, before you were a philosophy major, you were a business major, right?
Yeah.
I've heard that's really common in like business schools, where people are like, oh, like they're trying to network, but it feels super fake.
Oh, tremendously.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm starting this project. GoFundMe. Like, if you can support me, I know we're all struggling. We're all the same. Blah 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 blah. Just appeal to emotion.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's like that guy door knocking, and he's really good with words, and you know you shouldn't buy the product, but he's just really persuasive.
Yeah.
That's what it's just more coercion I can't say that.
Coercion.
Coercion, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, you can tell. It's just really hard to tell when the person's like very manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
That's when it's hard to tell. But for the most part, it's easy to tell when someone is being genuine. Because you've met strangers before that are just really genuine. You're like, damn, that guy's nice.
Yeah, I have.
Assuming they're not manipulating you, you know, like,
right,
they're not like some serial killer or something. But
right,
yeah, and it's usually with older folk. At least in my experience.
I have a great example of that. But first, I want to kind of go back before I give my example of like, I think it was totally like a great example of love with a stranger. Mm-hmm. But so I want to go back to your thought experiment for a moment about like how you opened the door for your girlfriend, not because you were thinking about, I'm going to open the door for my girlfriend, but because you were just distracted by looking at some other beautiful woman. I think, what if we change the thought experiment to flip it around, where it's like you intended to open up the door for your girlfriend, like that's the intention.
Oh, that's the intention.
But it's like really heavy, and then you like let go on accident, and if your hand slips and it just whacks your girlfriend, she gets knocked over, and she's just like on the ground, she's crying, she's mad, maybe she's bleeding. Like, that's a terrible consequence. Your intention was like, I'm going to open up the door, but maybe your hands were really sweaty and it just slipped and it was a heavy door.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's still like the love was there.
Yeah.
You know, but I think the consequences do matter, and the consequences matter because I want to go back to I don't want to go back to it too deeply, but attention. If you were paying closer to attention of what the surrounding was, you would have had a better consequence. If you were like, I'm going to open up this door for my girlfriend, but you were like really paying attention, like, I'm going to really open up this door and make sure it stays open, and you pay closer attention to like how sweaty your hands are, how heavy, like when you open the door, it's like, pay close attention, like it's pretty heavy, you know, don't just mind this go and then slip, you know. But I think if you take that careful attention, that leads to a better consequence. That also matters, because like the attention is the same either way. At least I think that's how I would think of it. But you know, that attention that leads to a better consequence, and it's like, oh well, the consequence, like the negative consequence of the door knocking your girlfriend over, that happened because you didn't pay careful attention. If you were really paying careful attention, that would have led to a better consequence and have been like a more superior act of love if you wanted to go there.
Can I give you a scenario?
Sure.
That might counter that belief.
Okay, yeah.
So say I'm super focused, right?
Okay.
I'm opening the door. I'm locked in.
That door is not slipping.
I could count the beads of sweat on my hand.
Okay.
I'm holding it for dear life, but God, I'm just too weak. I can't hold on. I let go because my body physically can't.
Oh,
and I was fully present, fully aware, but the door just still hit my girlfriend. Goddamn door. Do I still love her? Yeah, I do.
Or is it still an act of love?
Yeah, is it still an act of love? I would argue yes. Even if I think you're not fully present, it's still an act of love. Because it's really hard to be present all the time. I think you should be present all the time.
Right.
But sometimes a mindless act can be an act of love. Like you mindlessly just open the door. You mindlessly give a kiss. Or you mindlessly just go throughout the day. And you know what? No, I'm finding myself backtracking on that. I think you do need presentness.
To love?
Yeah. I think some days being mindless is okay. But for the most part, when being with a person, what do we value? Like you said, the attention, our time. I think when you're fully present, it's different.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever been out with a friend or someone that you care about, and then you guys are just talking, and then they go on their phone, and then you're just kind of sad?
Yeah.
And it's just because, and it's not even oh, hold on, my parents calling me, I have to take this, or someone's calling me, I have to take this. They're just,
it's you're in the middle of talking to them, and then they just go yeah.
That's the worst.
Yeah, I hate that.
And I think that is not an act of love.
No.
I think that's just a mindless reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think consciousness does play a role.
Yeah, mindless reactions to things are not acts of love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There has to be, I think you're right. I'm finding myself finding purpose to be a part of love.
Yeah. Well, I agree with everything that you're saying, but when you were saying you're fully present and the door is just too heavy.
Yeah.
It's that makes sense. I think that's a good counterexample. Why does that counterexample fail exactly?
I don't think it fails.
Oh, you don't think it fails? Okay.
Yeah. I think that's still an act of love.
Yeah, I'm as of right now, I'm pretty convinced by that.
Yeah. Because
you might just be, no, you might just be kind of you really did your best, your darndest, and it's and just because your girlfriend got hurt, it's is it any less of an act of love than if you successfully opened up the door, you know?
Yeah.
In that case, it resulted in pain, unfortunately, but.
Yeah, my poor girlfriend got hit by the door 4 times.
Yeah.
Poor lady.
It's yeah, maybe it's a really bad injury and you gotta call the ambulance. It's what happened? It's she got hit by the door. They're yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay, buddy.
So I was kind of stealing a joke there from a comedian. Anyways, okay. So the other thing was about I want to give this example of an act of love with a stranger that I had. Or not an act of love. It was just an interaction, I would say. It wasn't a specific act. But and after I tell it, I want to get your reaction and then take a bathroom / water break.
Okay.
And then maybe we can transition to more specific about the book that we read.
Oh yeah. I need to do a lot of stuff. All right, but go.
Yeah. Okay. So this was during COVID, and this was before I was a philosophy major. So I was still only majoring in music. And so during COVID, we didn't have access to the practice rooms in the music building. We didn't have access to the music building at all, really. Couldn't practice in my apartment because I would get noise complaints. I mean, sometimes I would anyways, but most, like 90% of my practicing was outside on SJSU campus. Just like pick a bench and just play. There wasn't really that many people out there anyways, but there were some people. So it did sort of, there were some interactions with random people. I had quite a bit that were not all of them were so loving. I had a guy throw a rock at me once.
Okay.
That's definitely not love. His intentions were not good. But I did have a homeless person, come up to me, and I was practicing trumpet. And this was definitely more of like my peak as a trumpet player. Like I was sounding pretty good. I was practicing all the time.
Not to toot your own horn, but yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Well, I'm good about to toot my own horn because like the way he complimented me was like the highest compliments a musician could ever get. He came up to me. He's like, "You have a gift. You're gonna bring joy to millions of people."
That's so sweet.
It was so sweet. He's like I heard it from afar, and I thought like the gates of heaven were opening. Like he had all these like really extravagant like compliments for my trumpet playing, which is just like, it was so kind of him. And we actually sat down and talked for a bit. He opened up about like his trauma and of his past a little bit. We also shared like favorite songs that we liked. And yeah, it was just like a really kind of beautiful moment. It was a little nerve-wracking, a little bit, especially when he first approached me, because you could tell like he looked like he was maybe not on drugs in that moment necessarily. Maybe he was, but like he had been doing drugs for his whole life, and it was like
for wear, huh?
Yeah, I was like, I just didn't know if I was safe right away. But after a couple of minutes of talking, it was like, oh, this person is just like, just showing love to me by complimenting me and telling me how like thankful he was to hear me play. And we just had like a really genuine conversation, a lot of like real listening in that good conversation that we had. Being present with each other, listening, being empathetic, sharing music together. And I thought it was with a stranger. He was an older guy. He was with someone that, you don't usually talk to on an everyday basis. And I thought that was a really beautiful sort of like moment. There wasn't, I mean, him complimenting me was an act of love. I feel like us sharing songs that we like and listening to each other were also acts of love for each other. But it was just like a whole like love scenario. It was really cool. Yeah, that's my little story about love with a stranger that I wanted to share.
I've had a similar experience.
Really?
Yeah.
Were you playing trumpet also?
No, I'm not musically gifted. I was just out in the street, getting Wingstop, saw a homeless guy. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy him wings.
Oh, that's very nice.
And I was like, bro, here you go. And he said thank you, and I was walking away. He said, wait. And I was like, what's up? He's like, you got like 5 minutes just to chat?
Wow.
And then I think he just needed someone to listen.
Yeah.
He just told me his life story and why he ended up on the streets. And
yeah.
He asked me why I bought him the food in the first place. He said he felt like invisible.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yeah, like the reason I bought it, I literally told him, I was like, I saw you and I saw myself, and I was just like, what if I was him?
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't it be nice just to get some food? Like, he looked pretty hungry. Like, he was just sitting there, like, looking through the bins. And I was just like, why not? I had the money. It wasn't, like, going out of my way.
Right.
Like, he was, like, probably, like, 20 feet away from the store. So I was just like, why not? I don't do it all the time. But, I don't know. It just came out. Like, I just wanted to be nice and show him an act of kindness.
Yeah.
Because if I was in his situation, I would want that.
Yeah, that
might be selfish, but I don't think so, because I kind of empathize with the guy. Or at least I think I did.
I think you did.
And yeah, I just talked to him for a while and then went back to school. And honestly, that made my day. Like, just connecting with people, it really makes a difference.
Yeah.
And I think especially with people who are down on their luck, they're in need of love. And I don't think it's hard to provide. Sometimes it's just paying attention. That's all someone needs. I think being heard is a big aspect.
Yeah.
Obviously, having your like shelter, food, and stuff be met is obvious, but I think when you're not busy surviving or trying to survive, or even then, like when you're trying to survive, like that homeless guy, he's just trying to survive. He found a time in his day to love somebody who was kind to him. That might have been easy difficulty, like you said, but still.
Because he bought you wings.
No, because I bought him wings.
Oh, okay.
I wish he bought me wings.
I don't know if he could do that.
Yeah, I know, but
yeah.
still.
Yeah. No, I think that's all. That all counts as love. That's a very kind. I commend you for that. Very kind. Definitely an act of love for sure. Empathy. Wishing well as well. I think wishing well is part of like the doing something good for them. I'm trying to think about the other ones that we had. Paying attention. You listened to him after he spoke with you. I think you're ticking all the boxes there. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
We're taking a break.
Take a break.
Yeah.
I need to pee.
Cool.
I need to drink water.
Me too.
And we need to also talk the book we read still. All right. Okay. We're back after a food and water break.
Awesome.
We're back online. So I guess this is kind of our second part, I guess, in a way. We haven't really talked about the book a whole lot, and I think we're gonna sort of wrap up the episode, make sure we got debriefed on some of the speeches that we heard about these different characters in Socrates' book about what love is. The first thing I wanted to bring up was one of the speeches talked about a lot of it talked about the whole dynamic between the lover and boyfriend thing, and that was like popular in ancient Greece, or at least with like the elites of ancient Greece. And so just to give a quick summary of what that is, the lover and boyfriend was what they call a homoerotic relationship between an older man and a younger boy, the lover being the older man, the boyfriend being the younger boy. And so the older man is more educated, considered to be more wise and more virtuous and more knowledgeable. And so the boyfriend is considered to be young and attractive and eager to learn and learn more about wisdom and virtue and how widen their knowledge and become more educated from their lover. And so in exchange for the knowledge and wisdom and virtue of the lover gets from the boyfriend gratification is the word that they use. And we'll leave it at that. They don't go into the details in the book of what exactly gratification. We'll just leave it at that one. We won't need to go into details. The book doesn't go into the details of what that means. And so those are the roles of lover and boyfriend. Anyway, so I kind of wanted to share this idea that I had. It kind of makes that kind of relationship, but then I kind of draw an analogy between that and relationships today. I guess in more of like the more liberal parts of America, where you have a lot of the heterosexual, not necessarily heterosexual, but I'd say heterosexual relationships now, you kind of see a sort of evening out, I guess, or balancing out of gender roles within heterosexual relationships. And so like traditionally you have like the man's the breadwinner, he's going out working, making the money, sort of providing so that they can provide all the other needs that the family needs. And so then the mother or the woman of the relationship stays at home, does the cleaning and cooking and like raising children. That's sort of like the traditional roles. But I think in more liberal parts, like where we are in the Bay Area, you see, at least I have seen in a lot of heterosexual relationships, that you see that it's kind of evening out. Like you see 2 income households very often, and both parents are kind of cooking and cleaning. Both people are taking both of the roles. They're balancing it out a little bit. And I think we can take this balancing out of roles in a relationship and apply it, and take this lover-boyfriend dynamic and apply it to ourselves and our relationships by, it is not only one person's job of the relationship to gratify the other person. I think that one's pretty straightforward. I think people pretty much already do that. It's like it's the job of both people in the relationship to gratify your partner.
It takes two to tango.
It takes two to tango. This
Yeah.
is true. It takes two to tango. But then at the same time, I think people don't always think about like this whole like sharing your education and knowledge and wisdom. Because and what I had thought about with this was that everyone is different and has different experiences. You know, every single person has a unique experience in life.
Yeah.
We all have different, like, we maybe grew up in a different town, different country. We have parents of different cultural backgrounds, our own different cultural backgrounds. We just grew up around different types of people, different kinds of personalities in our life, so many different things that will lead up to our unique experience. And our unique experience is what provides us of our knowledge of the world.
Yeah.
And because we have a unique experience that provides us our knowledge of the world, all of our knowledge is unique to ourselves as well.
Yeah.
And so we can share the wisdom and the virtue and the knowledge and the education that we get from that with our partners, and that can be mutual. And that's where I'm sort of thinking like we have also this balancing out of like providing knowledge and wisdom and gratification and balancing that out into sharing it with each other.
Okay.
That's what I got out of that. I was like, because I was reading about this dynamic, I was like, what in the world? But I was like, I was trying to find a way we could learn something from it. So that's what I got for that.
I agree. I mean, I think you touched down on like all important bases of how relationships ought to be. Of course, if you want to abide by the traditional gender roles, all power to you.
Right.
It's just like your concept of love and how it ought to be. But I think even in the traditional settings, both partners have to come together and make that effort. So there is always like them two taking the time to both put in that effort, whether it be communication, physical acts, etc., combination, whatever. I think it's that balancing out may look different to different people, and I think that's okay too. And I think finding your balance with your partner is all that really matters.
Right.
But I think to relate it back to your point with the lover and the boyfriend is that the lover is always trying to win the boyfriend. Or maybe not necessarily win their favor, but always putting in the effort, not to win their love, but just to make sure they are loved. I think that's important. Effort.
Okay. Yeah, so like the effort should also be mutual rather than...
Not a one-way street.
Okay, that's actually interesting because I feel like, in the book, it was definitely the lover that was kind of pursuing the boyfriend.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's maybe one role and dynamic that isn't really so even now I feel like it's very much like in heterosexual with like the assumption of heterosexual relationships, you know, I feel like in like the beginning of a relationship or before it starts, it's very much like the guy pursuing the girl rather than vice versa, you know?
Yeah, it's usually one-sided when it's in that aspect, or maybe in even all aspects. There's just putting it as there's a pursuer. I think that's wrong. I think you ought to both be pursuing each other.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe not in the beginning because it's always like that, but maybe not even in the beginning either, because from personal experiences, there was attraction and effort in the very beginning from both parties, and I think that's vital. I think like effort is necessary from both sides, because it's like, imagine you're dancing as hard as you can with your partner, and your partner is just like as stiff as a brick, not even trying to dance, just like swaying back and forth. You notice the stark difference between the two. I think that's how effort is. You can tell when someone really cares and someone's really trying. As opposed to like someone not trying at all.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like the dance picture there because like I've done a little bit of partner dancing, social dancing, and it's like when someone's stiff as a board, it's like you can tell it's like it takes two to tango, but right now there's only one of us really trying right now. Like not one of us trying because maybe they're stiff and they're really trying really hard. That can happen, but it's like it's not really happening both ways. Yeah, I think you're right. The effort does need to be mutual.
Yeah,
but it's also like, you know, you're in a relationship. I'm still single, so like, you know, maybe you understand that one a little bit more.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But to add on to something else, I know you wanted to touch on Agathon's speech. Do you want to go over that right now, or do you want to talk about
Agathon's speech? No, I didn't want to talk too much about Agathon. I didn't like Agathon's speech very much. It was which one or
not Agathon? The lack of.
Oh, it was Socrates' dialogue with Agathon.
Yeah, that's what I wanted.
Right. That was the other thing I wanted to mention. And this can be our probably our last.
Probably our last point, guys.
Probably our last point.
Yeah.
Because we need to wrap this up. But yeah. So basically, like, Socrates takes Agathon through this like dialogue, and he basically shows like the Socratic method, asking questions. Yeah. Asking a bunch of yes or no questions and showing them how, based on what they agree on, that there's a contradiction. But anyways, so he talks about how the love of something basically also comes with the desire for that thing. And so, and what's interesting is that the next move he does is that, like, the desire for something, you only desire things that you don't have. And so one could object to this, saying, well, you could desire things you already have. Like, you could have money and still desire money. That happens all the time. You could be drunk and desire to be drunk. Keep drinking.
Yeah.
I just thought that one right now. You could do that. But then Socrates actually anticipates this objection by saying,
as he always does.
What was that?
I said, as he always does, that Socrates.
Yeah, yeah, he's always anticipating the objections. But he anticipates the objection by saying, well, when you're desiring something that you already have, you're actually just desiring to continue to have it in the future.
Yeah.
And so, like if you desire money and you have a lot of money, you're not actually desiring the money. You're desiring to have money in the future.
Yeah.
You're desiring to continue to have money. If you're drunk and you're desiring to be drunk, you just want to keep the high.
Yeah.
You're just trying to maintain the high and stay feeling good. And so, I think that makes a lot of sense. So, and then he goes back. So to the desiring something means that you don't have it, and that you're in need of it, and that you're lacking of something. Mm-hmm. Therefore, the love of something amounts to the lack of something, the need of something. And then he goes further and says that love is the love of beauty and or good things. He kind of uses beautiful things and good things as like interchangeably. Like they're both, things that are beautiful are also good. Things that are good are also beautiful. And so, and since love is the love of beauty, that must mean that love does not possess beauty, and love is not good. Because love is the love of good things and the love of beauty. And since it's the love of those things, it means it doesn't have it.
Because loving is desiring something that you want or do not have.
Right, exactly.
So if you love good things, you don't have good things.
Exactly. And so, and that kind of puts it in a weird thing, because it sounds like oh, so is love not beautiful? Is love not good? What does that mean? And so it kind of throws you in a loop a little bit. When I was reading it, I was like, because the reasoning makes sense.
Yeah,
it's a good argument. I'm like, damn, like I thought love was supposed to be beautiful. And then what else? Then after he makes that point with Agathon, he starts retelling the dialogue he had with Diotima, which I know we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And so love is not, what was it? I'm forgetting. Anyways, the point is that love is not beautiful necessarily. It's not ugly. It's like in a middle ground. It's like, just because like love lacks beauty doesn't make it ugly. Yeah. That was another thing that
in the book they were talking about like love, and back then, or at least in the Greek times, they had gods, and the gods were these qualities.
Right.
And the god of love was born from, and excuse me if this is wrong, I think it was the goddess of like wisdom or something, or beauty, and like she had like a one night thing with like poverty.
No. So it was love was the child. Love,
The child,
capital L, love.
yeah.
Love is a god.
Yeah.
Was the child of the god resource and
Yeah.
poverty. It was
Yeah,
resource.
and poverty. That's what it was.
And so resource, I remember, was male, and poverty was female. And so resource is like the abundance of things.
yeah.
Plenty of food, what you think the god of resource would be. You have resources. And poverty was the opposite. And so love kind of gets birthed as like the middle of that, where like love, I think the qualities were like love doesn't sleep, like sleeps out on the streets and doesn't, like, it almost sounds like a homeless person in a way, but also had like this desire of like for virtue and wisdom and beauty, but was not wise, virtuous, or beautiful. But it wasn't the opposite of those either. Love wasn't the opposite. And that kind of paints like this interesting picture, symbolic picture of love.
And you know what I like about that symbolic picture? Love is very human, because love is like, in a sense, trying to get these virtuous qualities, but isn't always in need of them, but isn't never in lack of either. Not necessarily to say they don't possess it, but they don't possess it fully. Like they have a little bit part of the virtue, but they don't have all of it. So they're always in need of it. And I think that's very human, because us humans, or as people, we can say, or I would say, Will's very philosophical and loves wisdom and is always an avid learner. But that also implies you don't know a lot of things. But that's not to say you're dumb.
Exactly.
Yeah. It just means we're in the process of.
Yeah.
Like we're always in the process of love. So does that mean like you can never attain like all of love because you're always trying to pursue what you don't have, or you're in the journey of it?
Well, I don't know if it doesn't mean you can't attain love. It's just you can't really truly attain the things that you love.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I feel like love is like the desire of the things that you don't have. And that as long as you're desiring those things, then you have attained love. It's just you haven't attained those things because you love them.
Okay, well, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
When you're seeking out a partner, do you look for qualities in them that you don't possess yourself?
Yes.
I did that too. And I think that's interesting, because you become a more rounded person when you love a person that has qualities you don't possess. Because you learn to have them, or try to have them. I think that's where love kind of shines, is when it becomes like a holistic approach and like growing.
That makes sense, because it's like where your weaknesses are and where your personality has, I don't know.
Or your character even.
Your character. Your character flaws are.
Yeah.
And it's like, you want to attain the characteristics that are the opposite of your flaws.
Yeah.
Right? And so by desiring those things, you desire the person that has them.
Yeah.
And vice versa. And maybe that's what it means to find your other half.
Like in the book, they were saying that Zeus split us all up, guys.
We all used to have two heads, four arms,
four legs, and two sets of genitalia.
Mm-hmm.
We were like man and woman combined, and then Zeus split us up
because we went to war with the gods.
Yeah, we went to war with the gods,
and so
according to Greek mythology.
According to this book, I forget whose speech it was, talked about that.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
And that's where the phrase "your other half" comes from, because once Zeus split us in half, we were never whole again. And when you find the person you love, that's why you're whole again. That's where it comes from.
Yeah.
Neat little fact if you didn't know.
Yeah. We're all sort of condemned to look for that other half that was split up by Zeus.
Yeah.
Millions of years ago.
Yeah.
But
Zeus.
Yeah. Thanks, Zeus. Anyways, but the different character flaws.
Yeah.
And traits, like the flaws and the strengths, and that you desire those things. You love those things because you don't have them. Yeah. That's really interesting. That's a really good point. And so I have one more idea, Is it?
Let's hear it.
So I wanted, because I was mentioning this to you earlier, where we were having food, but like the song "Hallelujah"
Oh yes.
by Leonard Cohen is that love is a cold and broken hallelujah. Oh, love is not a victory march; it's a cold and broken hallelujah. Like a cold and broken hallelujah. That's just like such a substantive phrase. I don't know if I said that right, but
I'm assuming you did. So good job.
okay, thanks. That like, and it's not like a romantic picture of love.
Nope.
It's something a little bit more like a lot of suffering involved. And if you want to take draw from Buddhism for an example, that like the cause of suffering is desire.
Yeah.
And the love of something is to desire it. Then that in love, there's going to be a lot of suffering.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's the cold and the brokenness of love that Leonard Cohen seemed to be aware of. And that the hallelujah, the celebration, is that, I'm sure he was maybe thinking something a little bit more religious. I'm not really sure. But like, you can find that other half, even though there's going to be the cold and broken suffering through that,
Yeah, love's a journey.
I think, love is a journey of desiring things that you don't have and constantly strive for and become better in the process.
Yeah. And I think like with big picture stuff like wisdom, being a better person, you'll never stop loving what you don't have, because there's always going to be something you don't have, even when you think you have it. There's always room for growth.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's always room for love.
And love, guys. Always room for love.
Love is the answer.
Love is the answer.
All right. I think that's all I got.
Yeah, me too, guys.
All right.
Thank you for listening.
If you made it this far,
yeah,
you're awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I want to say that. If you made it this far, thank you.
You are a real one.
Yeah, you are a real one. And yeah, thank you for tuning in to Just Random Thoughts, guys. Bye.